One story that we've been following this week is the cancellation of The Late Show. CBS is canceling The Late Show with Stephen Colbert next May, shuttering a decades-old TV institution amid a changing media landscape, and it also removes one of President Trump's most prominent late-night critics from air. CBS saying that the show was canceled for financial reasons, not for content, but the timing of the cancellation led two U.S. senators to publicly question the motive. The news coming 3 days after Colbert criticized Paramount, his parent company, for a settlement between Paramount and President Trump. Of course, Paramount is the parent company of CBS. That was coming over a 60 Minutes story. Speaking about the senators, by the way, Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota was one of the senators that chimed in. She says, Stephen Colbert is a brilliant host and an even better person. Always loved being on The Late Show, and our most difficult and memorable interview was broadcast live from the Capitol the night of January 6th. Let's bring in Scott Ryan. He's a contributor to Late Nighter. He's also the author of The Last Days of Letterman. He's here. There's a lot to get into with a story like this. This is not only a storied franchise, The Late Show, but also we're seeing the cancellation of Stephen Colbert's show. The Guardian says the Writers Guild of America has called on New York state officials to launch an investigation into Paramount following the cancellation. In a strongly worded statement issued Friday, the Guild asked New York Attorney General Letitia James to investigate Paramount over potential wrongdoing. The union saying in part, cancellations are part of the business, but a corporation terminating a show in bad faith due to explicit or implicit political pressure is dangerous and unacceptable in a democratic society. So, Scott, is there hard evidence that the cancellation was due to political pressure?
Boy, it's hard to say if there's hard evidence or not, but it is pretty suspicious that this week he takes some jibes at CBS and Paramount, and then the #1 late night host is relieved of duty only a few days later. I looked on YouTube. The goodbye from Stephen Colbert has 4.5 million views, but the joke he made only has 2.5 million views. So I'm not sure this was in CBS's best interest to let him go.
So let's talk about some of the fallout from this, and really something that's fascinating to me is the economics behind a decision like this. Puck News's Matt Bellany reported that Colbert has been losing more than $40 million a year for CBS, and that it had a budget of more than $100 million per season. That's contrasting it with the network's daytime and primetime programming, which he noted were still profitable. As far as you know, is it true that The Late Show was losing that kind of cash? Is it feasible that it was canceled for financial reasons?
It's unlikely that it was canceled for financial reasons. Part of that is when you have a brand like The Late Show, started by David Letterman, taken over by Colbert, what that does for a network is when they have a new sitcom on, they get their people on there. When they have a new show streaming on Paramount, you get your people on there. That is not figured in an accountant's budget. To have that ability, why is Jimmy Fallon or Jimmy Kimmel going to have CBS stars come on their program to promote it? A network wants to have that ability, and CBS has just given that away, and Paramount as well.
The Daily Show on Comedy Central is also under the Paramount umbrella. Is that show at risk?
According to Jon Stewart, he just released something saying he should not be comfortable sitting in his chair. And that's a shame. You know, The Daily Show is an institution, and we need to laugh at these times, at all times. It doesn't matter who the president is. We need to be laughing at our leaders. That is the American way. That's what Johnny Carson did. That's what David Letterman did, Conan O'Brien. But Stephen Colbert loses his job a couple days after making not even that hard of a joke about this being a bribe.
Some reporting from the Washington Times. Stephen Colbert was receiving messages of support and affection from his fellow late-night hosts after announcing that the show was canceled. The Late Show with Stephen Colbert next May. Again, they say canceled 2026 next May. Jimmy Fallon saying he was just as shocked as everyone. I know Jimmy Kimmel had some choice words for Colbert's company as well. Is the 11:35 p.m. time slot aging out? Is there reason to believe that Kimmel and Fallon could go soon? Do we know if those shows are profitable, Scott?
Well, I think they're all profitable. I mean, they sell their ads. The YouTube ads are off the chart. That's where everyone watches it. There is an argument to be made. Are people tuning in live at 11:30? The ratings are very slim. But everyone is watching them on YouTube. You can see the numbers every day. It's very different from Johnny Carson's time when, the nation went to bed with Johnny.
So you know a thing or two about Letterman's legendary run on CBS. He put his parent company in the crosshairs from time to time, didn't he?
Look at what Dave did when GE was trying to buy NBC, which is really what's happening with Skydance. They're trying to purchase Paramount. Dave very famously sent a fruit basket over to GE and they wouldn't let him in. He filmed the whole thing. He did a slow-mo on the corporate handshake. It was much worse than anything. Colbert just made one little joke. It was no big deal. And you just got to wonder, are corporations too sensitive now and they can't take a joke?
I got to ask you, when I was growing up, my first late night show that I was really, really into was that short stint that Conan O'Brien had as the Tonight Show host. That whole saga between Jay Leno and Conan O'Brien was what got me into the industry. Since then, I've paid attention to these types of hosts. Politics has always been a part of the late night monologue. It doesn't matter what host you're talking about. Like you said, making fun of the president, that's always been a part of the game. But has it changed in recent years at all from your perspective?
I think it has changed a little bit. Johnny, you didn't know which way he leaned towards, but, it's very famous that when Johnny went against the Vietnam War and things like that, then the nation did. And it took a lot for Johnny to take a point of view. Nowadays, Colbert and Kimmel and Seth Meyers, they're taking very strong points of view. But also in this climate, it's kind of hard not to because the news has become just all we talk about. I feel like Letterman, Conan, Carson back in the day, they did a little bit of politics and then also just sort of pop culture. But now they've been so meshed together, it's hard to separate them.
What could Colbert do next? Again, he's still hosting the show until May of 2026, but could we see a return perhaps of the Colbert Report?
Look, Colbert is going to go down in history as a hero. He's going to be thought of as the Smothers Brothers. When CBS knocked the Smothers Brothers off back in the 60s, they became legend. So Colbert's going to be just fine. I think the real person we need to worry about is comedy. The Late Show was where so many comedians got their break on Letterman and on Colbert, and to have that drop out, it's that comic that right now is like 18, 19, 20 that's trying to make his break. That's who's losing out. Colbert's going to be just fine.
Let's talk a little bit more about that. There's probably a good swath of our audience that doesn't need to be lectured on how much of an institution these late night shows are. But tell us a little bit about The Late Show. The Tonight Show, of course, is arguably, perhaps not even arguably, the staple late night show. But David Letterman did make The Late Show a staple, an American staple. What are we losing next year?
I mean, it's going to break my heart because I am a Letterman fan. When I was working on my book, I got to tour the Ed Sullivan Theater and get some photos. Colbert had already taken over by then. The Beatles made their debut on the Ed Sullivan Theater. And that's what's so weird about this decision. They are chucking that. It'd be one thing if they were firing Colbert, which they're not doing. They're saying this whole thing is over. And there's so much history in that building. I find it hard to believe they're just going to let it sit there, and that would be such a shame.
These shows have big production crews, so it's not just Colbert going away. I think I heard him say, what was it, some 200 people that work on his staff as well?
Yeah, 200 people. And that was the thing about Letterman ending. You know, all those people were losing their jobs. They had worked with Dave, some of them from the very beginning for 30 plus years, and they all stuck with them. This is going to be an interesting thing with Colbert because if you're a cameraman and you know you're losing your job in May, this fall, do you take a job somewhere else? You know, will the staff stay with him? With Letterman, nobody quit. No one jumped ship. I got to interview most of his staff, and they said, "We're not leaving Dave." And Dave was telling them it might not be the best career decision. And Colbert's going to face that with whether his writers and staff will stick with him to the end. I think they will because the ratings are going to be off the charts from now till May.
Does the business model, though, of a late night show as we know it, 11:35 p.m., does the format make sense? Is it financially feasible in 2026 and moving forward?
It's definitely feasible. I mean, they have that building. That's the cost. Being on Broadway, that cost is fixed. Turning on some cameras and having a couple writers while you promote your billion-dollar movies, yeah, it's feasible.
And you would say the same for The Tonight Show and for Jimmy Kimmel Live?
Yeah, I think the Tonight Show's not going to go anywhere. I mean, that I just do not see NBC caving to that. The Tonight Show's, you know, we had Steve Allen and Carson and Jack Parr. I mean, that goes on forever. Whether the other hosts have lived up to that, who knows? I mean, I'm with you. I was watching Conan when Conan was on The Tonight Show, and he landed on his feet as well. So these hosts are going to be fine. It's whether this institution makes it or not. We're at a point where people have to decide if this matters or not.
That's right. All right. Well, Scott, we appreciate your time. Again, Scott Ryan is the author of The Last Days of Letterman. Appreciate the insight. We'd love to check in another time once there's any more developments on the story.
Thanks for having me.
You bet.